Gaslighting. It's a common enough expression these days, and it's based on an old 1930s or 1940s movie about this woman who was driven insane by her husband. Her husband wanted her money, and he made her believe that she was hearing and seeing things. And he did that by their house had just had gaslight installed, and the pipes were going through different parts of the house, and sometimes the light would dim suddenly and then flare. And he managed to make that happen by activating switches up in the attic. So while he was up in the attic moving around, she could hear these noises. Then the gas light would flicker, and she knew she was the only one in the house because he was away on business, when in fact he never went away on business. He went and hid in the attic. So these things, this gaslighting, is a way that people use to manipulate and control other people. Grooming and conditioning are two other words that describe a similar sort of mind-bending effect on someone else's perception of reality. And so today I'd like to talk about how once you've been gaslighted, groomed, or conditioned, you can begin to trust your perception again, and how you can bring yourself back to trusting other people as well. Because in reality, if you've been gaslighted, you do question, you ask yourself questions like, am I a fool for believing that for so long? Or how can everybody else around me believe this and it not be true? And why would anyone do this to someone else? And these questions, while I can completely understand where they come from, they don't really help, because your mind is something that wants to support you. It's a part of your body. It's like your heart is beating blood through your system. Your heart doesn't have any feelings or anything, but its whole objective is to keep your circulation going. It's not there to serve anybody else. It's serving you. And that's the same of your brain. Your brain is doing its best to serve you. And that means that when you have been hurt in the past, and then you're hurt again, and you're hurt a third time, and a fourth time, you begin to question, why does that happen to me? And when your brain asks yourself that question, and then it starts hunting around for evidence of answers, the evidence you're going to get are all of those memories of when you were hurt and the things the people said to you at that time, which at that time, if you were little enough, you had no reason to not believe it. So back then, when you were little, you believed it, and you've never had reason to question it. So your brain produces answers that hurt. They don't help you. And so the first thing that you need to do in order to gain self-control and trust in yourself is to be really careful how you frame your questions to yourself. So let me give you some examples of ways that you can really be affected by the way something is said. And I'm teaching you this so that you can start listening to the way people talk to you and assess for yourself if that is going to help you or if that's going to lead you down a path of self-doubt. Okay, so before we get there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say just a general one that has nothing to do about questioning yourself. Imagine that you've had a really long day at work, right? And you walk into the house and you're dropping your keys in their usual spot. And you see the couch there and you go, oh my goodness, I am so tired. You tell yourself that you're tired and you're looking at the couch. There's a good chance you're going to plop down on the couch for a little while and maybe scroll on your phone. That would feel really good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what happened if you walked in the door and you saw the couch there and you saw the door to the kitchen, right? And you walked in the door and you said, I could do with some more energy. The couch is not what you would go to. You wouldn't go sit on the couch to get more energy. You'd probably go into the kitchen and make yourself a cup of coffee. And so the way you think actually has an effect on the actions you take. So what we want to do now is look at not only the way we think can affect our actions, but the way we question can affect our answers. So if I say, why does this always happen to me? Then I search in my mind, and my mind wants to produce answers for me, even if there are no answers. Like, it's coincidental, That's not going to satisfy you. So you're going to find evidence that proves why this always happens to you. I'm unlucky. Nobody loves me. Nobody looks out for me. Nobody cares for me. I don't matter. Oh, and there could be a million different ways that you might think about it. However, instead of saying that, if something like this happens to you again, you can start by saying to yourself, I don't really deserve this. So you're giving yourself a little bit of love. You're saying, you know what? You don't deserve this. And then you explore what happened. What was going on when this thing happened? And you look around and you find maybe there are a set of circumstances that are there. And then you go, hey, in order to stop this from happening to me again, I'm going to make sure this circumstance and that circumstance aren't possible anymore. And what if those circumstances can't be changed? What if that's just the way it is? Well, then maybe you can create a new option. For example, if going down this road always produces a dog barking at you and you don't like the dog barking at you, what about just taking a different road to get to your destination? So you're creating other opportunities. You don't have to do it this way. You can maybe do it that way. And then there are navigating. Like, say you can't take another road. Say that dog is actually on your road. Well, the objective is maybe to get home today without the dog barking at you. But what about your long-term objective? Your long-term objective is to get back home and get ready for a party. And so if you're focusing on getting ready for the party and you're not focusing on the dog, when the dog starts barking, you might look over at the dog and say, this doesn't have anything to do with the balloons that I need to put up. And you just keep on staying focused on the party. And you can brush off the effect of the dog. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about all of these different ways of managing the way you think, is strengthening a more positive way of looking at stuff, a more positive way of asking your questions, a more positive way about thinking about things so you get results that you want. And it's very, very, very hard for people to come up with more positive ways of looking at things when they have a lot of criticism in their mind. Most people don't criticize other people as much as they criticize themselves. If you sit down and think about that for a minute, like one of my friends said to me the other day, why is it that my husband and I are perfectly nice to each other when we're at parties and we're at events and it's just lovely, but then when we get home, we're just nasty to each other? And I said, because when you're at a party, what you're doing is you're on your best behavior. You're not acting like your normal self. You're trying to show other people that you're nice. And when you get home, you just become yourself. And if when you're at home sitting on the couch scrolling and you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm such a fat slob. Why don't I ever do anything right? You know, all of those things that I did today were just a waste of time. It doesn't matter what I do, I never get it right. And then somebody you love walks in the room and they drop something on the floor and keep walking. And you're like, you never do anything right. What's wrong with you? The criticism, that thought pattern of criticism was already established in your mind. And so it was like, you know, when you take a bicycle and ride it across somebody's grass, you see the bicycle track on the grass. And you can tell what path it took. Well, your brain is taking the same path. It's taking the path to criticism, so it's going to just automatically criticize anybody around you. And that's why if you are criticizing yourself, you're setting yourself up for bad relationships with everyone else, because you won't be able to control that critical eye as you're looking at other people. And so there are some techniques that you can use. And there's this amazing training program that helps you be able to recognize those negative thoughts. And in fact, there were studies done that showed that there are 9 types or 9 categories of negative thinking. So when you were a little kid, if you were victimized, you might have negative thinking about the victim stance. Or if when you were a little kid, your parents weren't there for you and you were the one that had to take care of the family, you might have negative thinking around having to control everything. Now, a victim is not going to think the same way that a controller does. So there's this little test that asks a bunch of questions. It's not a test, it's an assessment. It asks a bunch of questions about the way you think. And then at the end, it kind of shows you the categories of thoughts that you probably most likely have. And once you recognize those categories of thoughts, and you go back and you look at the times when those thoughts were developed, you begin to realize that those thoughts were developed when people were lying to you. Now, they might not have realized that they were lying to you. And that's the real funny part. I'll tell you a story about something that happened to me when I was little. I would go outside and play, and I lived in Wisconsin in the USA. And in Wisconsin in the summertime and in the wintertime, the sky doesn't have a lot of humidity in it. And when there's not a lot of humidity in the sky looks blue. And I'm not talking about like what people usually describe as eggshell blue. I'm talking like a deep royal blue. That's the color of the sky in Wisconsin in the middle of winter and in the middle of summer when there is no humidity in the air to bounce light off and make the sky look a lighter color blue. So I grew up believing the sky is blue. And then I moved to Ireland, and it never occurred to me to question whether the sky is blue. And my little girl, when she was 2 or 3, she grabbed out a white crayon and she started to color with it. And I said, "Oh, you're coloring with white." And she said, "No, this is blue." And I'm kind of like going, "What? How did she get the idea that white is blue? She knows her colors." And then she pointed at the sky and she said, "It's the same color as the sky, and the sky is blue." And I realized that I'd been telling her all this time that the sky was blue, but in Ireland, the sky is not blue. It's usually white or gray. There might be some blue peeking through, but it's not all that often, to be honest. And I never paid attention to what color the clouds were. I just told her the sky was blue. So I wasn't doing anything wrong. It wasn't like I meant to gaslight my daughter, but I actually told her something that wasn't true. And she believed it. And so when you go back to those times when you said things to yourself that weren't true because of the way other people spoke to you or what they did, you realize you were only a child and you didn't know any better. So when I was a little girl, one of the things that I did was I'd ask my mom and dad for Nike shoes because that's what all of my friends had, and they were so cool. And well, I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and so when you're trying to clothe 9 kids, you can't afford to buy them brand name shoes. And so my mother said, "That's not for people like us. That's for rich people." And so when I was a little kid, I thought that rich people were not like normal people that just happened to have more money. I thought that they were like aliens or different. And as a little girl, I just believed it. And so when I got older, I started believing that I didn't want to be like an alien or somebody bad. I didn't want to have money. I would rather struggle and be like my family. And so I had a real bad relationship with money. Also, being the youngest in the family, whenever I tried to help out around the house, doing sweeping or dusting or the dishes or cooking, they would always stop me and they would say, "You're not fast enough. You don't do that. Just let your sister do it. She'll do it better." And it was not because I personally wasn't good at what I did. It was because I was younger, and so I didn't have the same coordination. But I grew up believing that I couldn't do anything. I am a really bad housekeeper to this day, partly because I've never been in the practice of keeping my house well, but also because I still have this kind of belief that I'm not good at it. And when you believe something like that, it makes it harder to do stuff. So you have these underlying beliefs in your mind, and you have to go back to the time when they were laid down originally and just look at that time and say to yourself, is the thought that I had about that really true? Once you can identify that actually that adult should never have said something like that to that little child, that child did not deserve it, that's when you can start saying to yourself, "You know what, I deserve better." And this program that I mentioned earlier is a program that helps you learn how to identify the negative thoughts that you're having. There are categories of them. And even if you don't know when you started developing those thoughts, to be able to stop yourself thinking it and start exploring different ways that you could think about things. As an adult with a lot of experience, you have the ability to realize things you couldn't realize when you were a kid. So now if you explore different ways to think about stuff, different ways to do stuff, then opportunities open up, and then you have like 4 or 5 options and you can make a choice. And the problem is that when you've been gaslighted as a child, you don't trust yourself. So you might go back to what you always did before because that's what you know, even if it hurts. Because if what you know hurts, things out there that you've never tried could hurt even more. The idea in your mind that it would feel better is hard to comprehend because you've had a hard life your whole life. So it's really important to say the consequences of trying something new are not more dangerous or more painful than what I've experienced. What I've experienced is as painful as it gets. Anything could be better than this. And if you're interested in finding out more about this program and learning how you can really decide for yourself and begin to trust your own mind and stop criticizing yourself so that you can stop criticizing and judging other people, and in that way grow relationships, and through growing relationships be able to show yourself that it is possible to trust people, that there are people out there who don't have any reason or wish or will to control or gaslight you. Those people actually are very few people in this world. Most people out there are more worried about what they're doing than what you're doing. And so they're not trying to control you or take advantage of you or anything. The majority of people are just trying to get on with life just like you are. And so that train of thought that makes you suspicious or fearful or unsure, self-doubting, self-critical, all of those thoughts are so well laid down in your mind that you right now, as you're listening to me, you're probably criticizing and you're probably questioning and you're probably skeptical, and that's perfectly normal. I mean, that's the way you've been trained your whole life to live and to think. So that's okay with me if you're skeptical. But how amazing would it be if you could just enjoy the day and not be suspicious or skeptical or self-doubting? How amazing, how much better relationships would you have with people? How much more fun would life be? If I said, hey, you want to go out for a drink? And you would say, oh, that sounds really nice. I'd love to spend time with you, Lori. Instead of, I wonder what she's up to. That I wonder what she's up to, or what does she want from me? Thought doesn't feel nice. Imagine not having thoughts like that anymore, and only having thoughts like that around people who in the past have made, you're not eliminating your ability to discern when somebody is out to get you, right? You're just eliminating the assumption that everybody is out to get you. So your ability to discern when there's a person there with really bad intentions towards you, you can still see that. You're not an idiot, right? But the overwhelming sense that the whole world is against you it's a hard way to live, and you don't have to live that way. So if you want to know more, just reach out to Anne, and she'll put you in touch with me. And yeah, thanks for having a listen. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation. It made you think and maybe opened up possibilities for you.